An intriguing opinion piece published by an American daily claims there's a link between K-dramas and Korea's low birth rate, which for its part has been on a steady rise in recent months. We have more on Press Perspective today. Hello, welcome to Press Perspective, that is, for this Friday, June 27th, here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. It's that time of the week yet again, during which we touch upon a host of social stories that made international headlines. For more on this, I have Hanna Siemiatycki. I'm sorry, Anna, you're going to have to help me pronounce your surname again.
Hanna Siemiatycki.
Right, Hanna Siemiatycki. You are a correspondent for French weekly La Tribune Dimanche.
Yes.
Welcome.
Exactly.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
And it's a pleasure to meet you as well. I also have writer Colin Marshall with the pundit's take on today's topic. As always, Colin, welcome back.
Glad to be back again.
Colin, let's start with you. Let's begin with your thoughts on the rising number of newborns as well as marriages here in South Korea. Do you believe we're witnessing a tangible shift in trend, or is this a temporary phenomenon, do you think?
Well, I think we ought like to think it is a permanent thing, at least because it would keep us from having to talk more about dropping birth rate. When in fact, it's been rising. It's a low birth rate still, but the statistic that's being made much of right now is that compared to last year, April of this year saw an 8.7% rise in the birth rate, I believe it was. And so this is the largest jump of that kind in 34 years, I believe it was. So this is something, I suppose, to celebrate. It's not something to worry about in and of itself. The overall rate is, of course, still below replacement. So Korea is not exactly out of the woods, but this has been going on. The rate has been rising gradually, though it may be, and in small steps, though it may be, for the past 10 months or so, the better part of a year. And so it seems like the makings of a longer-term trend. Of course, it could always fall off. It's really hard to say, of course. People will make all kinds of predictions, and people will also speculate a lot about the reasons behind this increase after such a long decrease. And one of them is a fairly simple and straightforward explanation that proportionally there coming to be more women in their early 30s among the Korean population than there were before. There's some kind of a bump demographically there. And as more women come into their early 30s than were in their early 30s recently, you have more women with an interest in having families in that time of life. And so that's one factor, I'm sure. There are others, of course. There's lots of government efforts to, as we all know, to encourage, to incentivize having babies, starting families. But the marriage rate, as you say, has also seen an increase. So you could say that there is a slight sort of social reorientation towards marriage and children where there hadn't been for at least a few decades, or in the same way. So it's, of course, it's something people welcome. It's a phenomenon people welcome, but it's a little early to judge what it's going to look like in the long term. And that's the way we have to look at it, because it wasn't so long ago Korea was afraid of overpopulation, that the schools would explode from too many kids and all this. There was really a lot of government material out there advocating for having less kids. Telling the Korean public, stop it too if you can. Now it's the other way around. So we need to take a long view to assess this more, I think, soberly, shall we say.
Which is what quite a number of pundits have been saying.
Indeed.
And now, Hanna Siemiatycki, do excuse my inability to pronounce your name at the start of the program. Hanna, Korea has the world's lowest birth rate. As of findings last year, we stand at 0.75. What have been some of your first-hand observations here in South Korea?
Well, I would say that as a French correspondent who just arrived about 2 months ago here, Korea's low birth rate is something you don't just read about. For me, it's something you can feel in everyday life. For example, in Seoul, where I live and actually has the lowest birth rate in the entire country, I can really feel it. I mean that in cafes and restaurants, I've noticed a lot of couples, single people, and even group of friends, but rarely young families. Also in my neighborhood, there are very few children. For example, there is this playgrounds where that's always empty. And actually, I think that in Seoul, I've seen more people pushing strollers for dogs than for babies too. So, and yes, there is another thing I've noticed too, is that like on Seoul subway, there are these seats reserved for pregnant women, and they are rarely taken. And also I've noticed that sometimes they are taken by elderly people because during rush hours, there are not enough seats dedicated to them, so yeah.
Right, it's an unfortunate scene.
I think, yes, maybe Korea's demographic crisis, yes, isn't just a statistic. You can feel it all around you.
Right. Colin, in the meantime, though, the New York Times, it recently carried an opinion piece, quite an intriguing one, claiming that there was a link between K-dramas and Korea's low birth rate. Could you tell us a bit about this particular opinion piece, and to what extent do you agree with it?
Claiming or implying a link in any case, but this is the kind of piece. It's good timing to write it now, because if the birth rate keeps rising, at some point it won't be so viable to pitch to editors. And as any of us who write essays in public know, if you know about something in particular and you can attach it to a current trend, you've got yourself a pitch. You can write that essay. And this is a piece by Yoon Hong, who's pretty well known in the West among readers about Korea in English. She had a book called The Birth of Korean Cool in 2014, I think it was, and just put out a new edition revised with chapters about BTS and Squid Game and Parasite and all that. And so she's looked to as kind of an authority on Korean popular culture and the sort of the soft power of Korea that it has achieved through its pop culture. And so this is a sort of a natural piece for her to write, and she covers mainly, or she uses as examples, two series. One of them, Sky Castle, which is a Korean drama set among the sort of elite of Gangnam. And it's somewhat satirical, but also sort of serious. One of these distinctive Korean genres. I mean, she emphasizes that it's not that exaggerated, what you see in Sky Castle, the sort of forms of competition or what parents pay for to like try to keep their kids in the upper class, that whole thing. But it has a satirical element to it, of course. And so viewers, to Yoon Hong's mind, viewers watching that, they're gonna think, ooh, that's the good outcome. If things go well, I'm gonna still have to be in the world of Sky Castle, where it's just all about paying for every possible thing to ensure my kids are passed through the filters that sort of stand for success in Korea. That doesn't sound so good. And then the other one is called, in English, I think it's Birth Care Center, as odd as that name sounds. That's the translation of Sanhujoriwon, which is the name of the facilities that many pregnant women in Korea stay after they give birth for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, in order to, as Yoon Hong puts it, recover their bodies, to get back to how they were, to sort of get to their pre-pregnancy state again. That is one purpose of them, true. They also provide sort of education about child rearing, that kind of thing, for husbands as well. I myself will be visiting one soon. My wife's going to give birth in August, and we've got the Joriwon booked. And so we watched this other series, Birth Care Center, ourselves, and it's pretty entertaining. But it's also a comedy in many ways. It's drama/comedy, that Korean mix where it's serious about its emotions, but also it heavily satirizes the kind of competition the moms are in with each other subtly, and the way that the sort of ajumma who run the place kind of sternly feel like they have to control their clients, and all kinds of social dynamics that play out in that kind of setting. That series uses it for comedy and for drama, for all kinds of different emotions. And yes, I guess you could watch these shows and say, I don't want to have any of this, but I suspect Korean dramas are not a primary cause of the low birth rate, but I suspect what she's getting at more is that it reflects the characteristics of Korean society that people cite when they're asked, why don't you want to have babies? They'll point to, I don't like the competition, I don't like the education culture, I don't like the attitudes moms have toward each other, I don't like all the expectations, what I have to spend money on. These dramas use those aspects of society for their stories. And as Yoon Hong points out, most drama writers are women. So they're writing from experience, or they're writing from their feelings about, like, maybe they don't have kids. Maybe they think, oh, I don't want to do this. Let's make a story about it, But I think it is, like all entertainment, a reflection of its culture, but not to be taken too seriously as a driver of trends. But as a reflection of attitudes, yes, I think it's very informative.
Right. Another article, Anna, by the Agence France-Presse, though, it sheds light on the link between K-dramas and mental health. Could you tell us a bit more about that particular coverage and your thoughts as well?
Yes, well, yes, according to this article made by AFP, there is this Korean-American therapist who say that Kdrama can help with mental health. And because Kdrama is dealing with issues such as like grief, family pressure, and like this kind of topics. It can help people to process with their own emotions. There is this example of an American school teacher. She discovered Kdrama during a very difficult time, and it helped her to start grieving, whether she hadn't been able to do so before. Yes, so also a Seoul psychiatrist say that Kdramas could be a form of modern art therapy. So according to my thoughts, I would say that I do believe that any kind of art can be a form of therapy, whether it's music, Kdramas, or even like movies, a TV show. In that sense, Kdrama can provide emotional support to people. But I also think that we shouldn't forget the other side, which is that these kind of TV shows can become easily addictive, and like instead helping people to reconnect with the real world, it could make them more like it could provoke more isolation and yes, disconnect from the real world. It doesn't help them necessarily to connect with each other too. But I think that said, many international viewers who grown up with American TV shows, for example, watching K-dramas can help them to discover new culture, making them travel, and yeah, so I think we have to consider the pros and cons of K-dramas.
Right, for sure. Colin, quite a number of foreign media outlets in recent years have referred to South Korea as a cultural powerhouse. Do you suppose this title is quite fitting, or does South Korea still have more to do?
Well, it's one of those cliches. It's become a cliche now. 20 years ago, if you said South Korea was a cultural powerhouse, people wouldn't have believed you. Now, it's so common to hear. It's like, oh, yeah, of course it is, right? That's why it's a cliche, because people accept it. They think, oh, it's true. South Korea, its culture is everywhere. It's across Asia. It's in the West as well. And I do hear, I participate in certain conferences about this from time to time, and people will argue over whether, oh, South Korean culture has more, there's more potential in the world, there's more ground to cover, we can find bigger and bigger audiences, or others say, no, it's over. So you have these diametrically opposed opinions. For myself, I think there probably is a wider audience to be found. There are certain countries that are much more into K-dramas, K-pop, Korean food, what have you, than others. Sometimes that's shaped by the proximity to Korea, and sometimes it just, some countries, certain European countries, for example, have a better cultural fit or a more obvious cultural fit with Korea so far, but others could come on board as well. Now, where the limits are of that, I'm not exactly sure, but this is something that we mentioned Yoon Hee-hong. She writes about this. You know, her book was The Birth of Korean Cool. She's always on that beat in the Western media of like, what areas has Korean culture, Korean pop culture got into next? Where is it being adopted or picked up? Where are there fans that we didn't sort of realize there would be fans before? Nobody thought there would be fans before. So it's hard to, you'd really have to push hard for the argument that it was over, that sort of the Hallyu, the Korean wave, has nowhere else to go. But you could say that, you know, maybe the existing forms are not played out, but there are other forms to explore. You know, sometimes you hear people advocate for more traditional Korean culture. How could that be propagated in the rest of the world more effectively? Or are there other forms of pop culture that Koreans enjoy that haven't really successfully, or nobody's thought of putting them out to the West or other parts of the world yet? And then there are parts of the world where it's sort of, in Africa and in the Middle East, there are more and more fans of Korean dramas and Korean culture, Korean media. So those are huge markets. And I think you have to be a bit creative, but there still is a lot that's possible. I mean, I think oftentimes, you know, in recent years, there were these dramas that actually brought back, brought back the idea of the Korean Empire. They envisioned a Korea where the empire, which was the late 19th century, early 20th, before the colonial period, still existed. That had the setting was the imagined Korean Empire, but now, as if there was continuity. And those were sort of semi-interesting, but I often think of Korean pop culture, like Hallyu, as a kind of Korean cultural empire. It's, in a way, that itself is the continuation. Not in a bad way. It's like an empire that people willingly sign up to enjoy, if that's not too much of a contradiction in terms. But it has an imperial spread, I would say. That's the form you see.
Another component of the empire that Colin speaks about, the Korean wave, is of course the food. Now, there is much speculation, Anna, about which next Korean or K-food, if you will cause or fuel the next global craze. What are your thoughts regarding this? You've only been here for about 2 months. Have you had an opportunity to taste a lot of Korean food?
Yeah, actually, I tasted a lot of Korean food, and I think that I won't be able to I don't know what will be the next Korean global craze, like K-food, but what I can share is my experience as a French journalist in France, because I've seen how Korean food has become popular in recent years in France. For example, kimchi, tteokbokki, Korean barbecue. Yes, a lot of dishes like that are quite well known in France, and many Korean restaurants popped up in recent years in Paris too. But even like 5 years ago, my sister was already like cooking kimbap at home. So, and I think it has a lot to do with Kdrama and K-pop, which highly contributed to introduce Western people to K-food. And I think that one thing I've noticed in Paris is that French people are really fond of cheesy versions of Korean food, like ramyeon and tteokbokki with cheese. Like, for example, a friend of mine went to this Korean restaurant chain in Paris, which specializes in this concept, which is like Korean cheesy comfort food. So I do believe, like, as far as I've been here in Korea, I've tasted 닭갈비, and I think that this kind of food has a big, like, potential, global potential, and especially in France, because we have this this culture of gathering and sharing meals together, like spending hours to talk about our lives together, whether with friends or family. So I do think that 닭갈비, which is just cooked in front of you and you share a lot of things with friends, could fit really well with this French dining culture.
Right. And speaking about the French media, Anna, one covered South Korea's plan to introduce AI-based evaluation methods across the education system. What has been the response to that coverage? And do tell us a bit about it as well.
Yes. Well, recently, French media, they reported that South Korean authorities are considering handing over the entire task of grading paper students to AI. And this idea comes as the country's crucial final high school exam, the Sunhee, might soon include more open-ended questions and also like kind of essays, which will replace part of the multiple choice questions. So from a French perspective, it is quite surprising because, you know, in France we have the final exam, which is called the baccalaureate, and it includes mostly essays and open-ended questions. So I would think that in France we would dedicate I think it would be the opposite, like multiple choice questions will be handing over to AI, rather than essay would be dedicated to human graders. And there is another thing I would like to talk about when it comes to AI in education in South Korea. There is my French colleague, Celio Fioretti, who you know well because, like, as the French correspondent for La Croix. Recently, he went to a 4th grade classroom in Daegu back in April, and he visited this. And so in this classroom, there are individual tablets for students. So they only focus on these tablets and they don't talk to each other anymore, even with the teacher. So and it was part of the program from the former government in Seoul, but now it has been questioning by the current government led by Lee Jae-myung. So the young students, they just put their headphones on and they don't discuss with each other anymore. So I think that this can be problematic at a young age where brains are still under development, especially through social interactions. And they are not yet mature to face addiction too. So I think that when it comes to AI in education, we should be really careful regarding children's mental health issues.
Right, for sure, of course. I think South Korea itself is actually exploring the many diverse options of including AI within the classroom arena, of course. Colin, there also has been a bit of media coverage about college students being quite upset about professors resorting to ChatGPT for their lectures. Could you walk us through the concerns raised within the academic arena amid the advances in AI?
Yes, as you say, these are professors using it. These are students being angry about professors using it, not the other way around, which is what you usually see, or what we have been hearing about. The concerns have all revolved around, oh, students are going to cheat, students are going to get AI to write their papers for them, students are going to do this and that and whatever with AI that we don't want to allow. Fair enough, and it certainly seems to be happening at quite a large scale as well. But this recent New York Times piece was about, yes, professors using AI to generate slides for class, for use in lectures, or worse, to generate responses, evaluations to student papers. And it's one thing to use AI, but they were kind of sloppy about it. They left in certain lines that revealed that they were talking to ChatGPT or whatever. Make it a little more positive. They just leave that part in. So, that's pretty sloppy. And the excuse, or not excuse, but one explanation professors could give you is that, they'll say this, yes, we use it. It's a helpful tool, we have a big workload, but we always sort of look over the results and we have to use our expertise to evaluate what the output is. Well, that shows you they're not evaluating very closely if they're leaving in the prompt they typed in to get the result. But this is inevitable. It was inevitable with students, and it will be with professors or any other professional who can use AI to cut corners. They will. So rather than railing against it, the question is, how can this environment adapt to that? And AI, as we refer to it with the sort of ChatGPTs of the world, is a pretty new technology. It came out in 2022, I think, publicly. And so that's not enough time for institutions to adapt themselves to it, or even for social practices. It's still a very addictive technology, as most technologies are when they just come out. And so I think it'll be a long while before we see universities, if they do adapt. This is a question of if not when. They have many other concerns, the university. The crisis of purpose of higher education has been going on for a long time in the US, and here as well. And in Korea, talk to anyone who teaches here, and they'll tell you the culture of cheating is much stronger here, in the sense that it's more accepted, not accepted, but more expected. It's more expected students will cheat. And we've seen political figures, for example, whose theses have been revealed as plagiarized. So we're dealing with a world here in Korea where people, to an extent, accept this goes on. And people might get in trouble occasionally, but they are more realistic about the fact that, yes, if this works, people are going to use it. So maybe Korea could be well equipped to actually metabolize AI in a way that other countries can't, or maybe that's wishful thinking. I'm not sure. It's one of the two.
Well, it's definitely a topic that we can talk about some more in another session. I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Colin, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today.
Thank you.
And Hanna Siemiatycki, the correspondent for French weekly La Tribune Dimanche, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today.
Thank you so much.
Right, well, on that note, we say goodbye. Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend.